Hi, welcome to another episode of MIA Podcasts. Today we have a fantastic guest who I'll introduce in just a second. So the whole point of the podcast, MIA Podcast, is to answer this question: will Australian manufacturing ever return to the glory days of the 60s? And to help us answer this is Leigh Rust from Safetyline Jalousie.
Hey John, how are you?
Good, mate. Welcome. So, Leigh, do you want to give a little bit of background around the business, how you started, and what your business is all about?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, so I'll give you the condensed version, I guess. I grew up in a manufacturing business. My father owns a company called Vigola, which is an opening and closing roof. Sort of did my manufacturing apprenticeship, if you will, with him, but realized pretty quickly it was always going to be his business and not my business. So me and my brother actually ventured out into what is now Safetyline Jalousie. It comes from French origins. Basically what it is, it's a Louvre Windows system, really high performing, that's tailored towards the commercial sector.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I just realized I did pronounce that slightly incorrectly. Jalousie, not Jalousie.
That's all right. It gets a lot of people do that. So Safetyline Jalousie. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, how long has the business been around for?
So we're in our 12th year this year.
Yep. And now, if for those of you who may be following the podcast, whether you're listening or watching, we recently interviewed Amanda from Yellow Panda, and we did mention you briefly, Leigh. Now, you have won 3 years in a row, an Entrepreneur of the Year award. Do you want to just give a little bit of background as to what that is?
Yeah, so it's quite a prestigious award, to be honest. It's through Business News Australia. It's quite well vetted and accredited. And we won Young Entrepreneur of the Year for manufacturing sector in Sydney in our first year. And then the second year we won Property and Construction Entrepreneur of the Year. So it's pretty proud moment for us, 10 years of hard work to get recognised for something like that. It's definitely helped celebrate our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, and congratulations, by the way. That's pretty amazing. It's something that from my end and a lot of other people's end as well is that whole one of the things Australian manufacturing is known for is quality. So I think to win that award, there's obviously an exceptional level of quality in your business.
Thank you for that.
Pleasure. So look, we were just having a little bit of a chat earlier. Some of the challenges that Australian manufacturing is going through at the moment is like rising costs. We've just had all this rain. Where do you see Australian manufacturing right at the moment? Because we're in this funny situation of we've got an advantage because of COVID. There's logistics, all that sort of stuff for Australian manufacturing to take advantage of that Gen 4 manufacturing. What do you say some of the struggles are at the moment? And then we'll flip into some of the advantages as well.
I think some of the struggles is capacity, to be honest. I don't think we have enough capacity onshore to meet the demands, especially in my sector, the construction and building industry. We rely on Asia so heavily that I feel that our onshore capabilities just aren't enough.
Yeah, and you're a very physically resource intensive business, I'd imagine. So is it people in terms of people resources? Is that sort of the capability you're looking at?
I think it's people, for one, yes, but I think it's also material. In my industry, aluminium and glass, even though there are some local suppliers, a lot of it is offshore in Asia, and so we're still relying on shipping and the like. We really need to bring back more capability here, bigger infrastructure to have our own supply chains. We're not relying on offshore all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And people we've been speaking to, there is a slow resurgence. I mean, I know when I have dinner with my dad, who was in manufacturing as well, he was always saying it was utter madness to ship our raw materials overseas for them to process it. We buy it back, then we turn it into something, and then we send it over there to turn it into something else, and then we buy it back again. There's like umpteen 1,000 rounds of buyback. Have you got any suppliers at the moment that are thinking about moving it local, or is that off in the distance?
No, it's definitely. I've got other people in the aluminium and glass industry. There's definitely a lot more whispers now of people, bringing capabilities back onshore just because of all the shipping delays and things like that. But again, it comes back to, it's always a cost thing. Builders demand low costs, and it's a double-edged sword. But there's definitely a feel and a trend that it is coming back onshore in small amounts. But I think that is a good sign. Any amount is a good amount.
Yeah, 100%. And I think some of the interesting things we were talking about just before is that just the whole holdups in the building industry because of that, the crazy rain we've had in the last, well, probably the whole year, really. We've seen some businesses who have unfortunately had to fold, but some businesses that are just putting spending on hold because just because of the delays of getting able to get people on site, and actually they've got a year's worth of production, but they can't start. How are you finding that?
Yeah, we're definitely feeling that at the moment. I feel like the rain at the start of the year sort of was the icing on the cake of the 2 years of the COVID lockdowns. We sort of came out of lockdown and everyone thought, yeah, we're back to getting on with it. And then rain really put a massive delay on all the sites. And I feel there's a 6-month lag now of, projects starting to actually come into fruition. But then you add on to the top of that is material delays. So, people are having trouble getting steel from overseas and the like. If you can't get the steel down, the structure can't go up. So everything just comes to a grinding halt. So we're definitely feeling that. And yeah, the labour force, we're missing that stream of, backpackers, if you will, that came on sites and produced a lot of the labour for us. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. Are you seeing any turnaround? I mean, we're hearing people in the market saying the labour market's just starting to shift. What are you seeing happen there?
Yeah, definitely from my perspective, we are seeing a shift. Things are starting to move again. Timeframes are getting shorter. So we'd have to assume the labour force is getting stronger, which is a great sign.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, hopefully there's nothing else mental that comes into the picture because, yeah, you're right. The last 2-3 years have been pretty hard. Let's hope that what's it that is it not chicken pox, whatever it is, the new one doesn't cause any issues.
Monkeypox.
Monkeypox, that's the one. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that one. Now, on the positive side, what are you seeing more positively in Australian manufacturing at the moment? Whether it be a movement you're attached to or just something other people may not be aware of?
Well, again, from the construction industry's perspective, I have seen a lot more builders asking, are you local? Can you supply locally? Are there any supply chain issues? And I think we are, in the tender process, they're starting to look at us more favourably because we are onshore. We can help them meet their timelines and schedules. So that's been something great that's come out of this, is builders being more aware of who is local and who is not. And from my perspective, I'd like to see government get involved more and put, more stringent sort of criteria around the building codes and acts to prefer or favour local suppliers instead of offshore suppliers.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. One of our recent guests was saying that whole even insurance coverage. Some insurers will not cover a building if, say, someone has imported materials from overseas and they don't follow the basic guidelines. So obviously a local business will follow all the local guidelines, and you're assured that when a building goes up, it meets minimum requirements.
Yeah, so there's obviously in my case, we're an Australian manufacturer. We do a lot of education projects which are government funded. So we have Australian architects designing Australian schools for Australian children using Australian builders generally, and then they go and use a product from China or Asia or wherever it may be. So the whole circular economy thing just disappears because the money that we should be keeping here to revolve around and to grow gets sent offshore. So it's a bit of a bugbear for me, that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, are you currently involved in any movements or watching them where?
Yeah. So recently I've founded a movement called Suppliers Declare. So it's a sustainability movement predominantly. It's focused around local manufacturers in the construction industry generally coming together to see how we can move forward as a body or an industry to be more sustainable. And part of being sustainable, I believe, is being onshore because there's no shipping and everything else that comes with it. So yeah, it's a movement I'm pretty passionate about, and I've probably founded that a year ago. So we're hoping to get some more traction behind it.
Yeah, and how do people find out more information about that?
So yeah, there's a website, suppliersdeclare.com.au, or you can even go onto the Safetyline Jalousie website and you'll see links back to there. But it's basically anyone can jump on and join or sign the petition. You just have to be in that sustainability manufacturing space and actually care to move this industry forward.
There you go. If you are a listener or watcher, please jump on and give your support, sign up, because I absolutely agree. I mean, if we look at what's going on geographically, I wish I could speak today. Geographically, we've obviously got war in Europe. Who would have thought at the start of the year that Russia would be invading another country? There's some issues with Taiwan and China at the moment. There's a lot of risk in overseas markets at the moment. And if we look way back at sort of the World War II days, it was all about being self-sustainable. And a lot of our guests who come on say we absolutely have the capability of being self-sustainable. We just need, I'm not saying that Australia is going to go to war, but let's have a bit of a mindset of being self-sustainable anyway, where we look at how do we bring things back onshore. We've got newer generations of manufacturing now in terms of automation and technology, which reduce production costs. And I think we have the capability of being way more competitive on the world market. Let's look at how we can do it.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, we have a lot of skill, a lot of resources that a lot of the world doesn't have. We should keep it here as much as we can.
Yeah. What are you finding with just back in the labor market? We're saying this before, there's a lot of guys out there who we meet who it's like in their genes. Their genes they're just, when they were born for manufacturing. I love seeing businesses like yours where you're going out there and you're training up these guys and helping them train future generations. What are you finding that labor market's like from that perspective?
Yeah, it's funny because I've got some guys on the floor here that we've tried to actually promote through our business and move them into sort of like a 2IC type level on the floor, but they actually don't want to do it. They prefer to be hands-on. They like the cutting and the pressing and the machines and things like that. It's just in their blood. So there's people out there that want to do it, and there's actually quite a high skill level. I think it's just, you just got to, I think it's about building a culture of that in your environment. And then I think that people seem to be attracted to that.
Yes. Yeah. So if you remember from listeners from the meeting we had with Amanda from Yellow Panda, there was that from the PR side, but you're actually right. There's that from the whole business culture side as well. For those who don't know, I used to be in the Reserve Army many years ago for about 15 years. And we used to have guys in there that were always hands-on. And those guys, you give them a pick and a shovel, and they would just smash out a pit, machine gun pit or something like that. So, but it was just absolutely in their blood. You give them a problem, and they'll just use their hands to smash it out. And I think it's great to see businesses like yours being able to provide an outlet for them, because if Australia's, I think in the last few years we've traditionally probably shifted more towards tech, and that's great. But for guys who just they're not built for tech for whatever reason. Give them something as well, so they don't end up on the streets.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So, what other sort of businesses have you got in your movement as well?
And suppliers declare there's a range of businesses from like timber suppliers to aluminium fabricators. There's, I think, concrete people. There's actually even people that do like the garden walls or anything to do with the built environment generally to help make that environment more sustainable as a movement is who we want involved.
Yeah, and you said there's an education layer. Is that correct?
So no, my company focuses on education very strongly, as in at the sector. But the suppliers declare movement is about educating the market. So there's a movement called Architects Declare and another movement called Builders Declare. So we've sort of tacked onto the back of that so that we can educate builders and architects about where these products are coming from, where the manufacturing process is being done, so that we can basically educate them on being more sustainable from a supplier perspective as well.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. So rather than just using their traditional suppliers, they've now got choice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Now, on the, I guess the supply chain, growing your business and all that. Are you exporting yet, or you local for now?
Yeah, we do a small amount of export. So my business is located in Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne, and all manufacturing is done out of Sydney. And we do export into the Pacific region. So we've done work in Fiji, Vanuatu, PNG, places like that. And that is something on our radar, is to continue to export into those bigger markets. So I think next stop for us is New Zealand, and then we want to dip our toe over in Asia, sort of get a bit of that money back.
Yes. Yeah. What would that look like for you? Because obviously there's some pretty massive construction jobs at the moment. What would that look like for you?
Yeah, Asia's a funny market. It's very price sensitive, but the trends, like in Australia, the building codes are getting, I guess, higher and harder to achieve. So they are looking for now, more high performing products. So I see that as a market we could take on, not to flood the market, but to pick and choose some really high performing projects and go after them with what we can do and our quality. Like you said earlier, Australia is known for quality, and I believe that's a massive selling point for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, even if we do just look locally, the building construction market, I would dare say the last few years there's been some semi-questionable, buildings that have gone up. I hear whispers in the market. And from our end, there's obviously government layers that are stamping those practices out. I've got a friend who works. They do the rigging and all that sort of stuff, and they've had to replace a whole bunch of windows in some high-rise buildings just near me. And they're just saying that low quality. Everyone's just trying to cut costs, whatnot, and it's it slapped a lot of people in the face, because obviously cutting costs in building industry doesn't really work.
Definitely doesn't.
Be interesting to see what happens in the Asian market as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm all for more compliance and more checks and all this kind of thing, because it will help bring manufacturing back on shore. If you've got more compliance and more checks and someone actually from a government level signing off on these projects, it'll give Australian manufacturers like myself more chance to get on projects, because the builder knows he's going to be watched and he won't be able to use maybe a non-compliant type product over an Australian product.
Yeah. And, I'm excited that I didn't realize the Asian market is starting to tap into that as well. That's very exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And you mentioned New Zealand as well. That's, I guess a traditional trading partner for us. So that's pretty exciting as well. Is that going to be a big market for you, or what would you say there?
I don't think it'll be a huge market, but New Zealand, they do have they build to really high standards over there because of they've got earthquakes, they've got hot, they've got cold, and I really feel that our product fits that market. And we've looked at what sort of capabilities of manufacturing they have over there, and I guess it's a little bit, like Australia, where they don't have a great manufacturing base. So I feel it's something we can do is manufacture here and export to New Zealand. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to expand.
Yeah. Look, interesting you mentioned, they don't have they did for a little while have a fairly strong manufacturing, because they used to have all the Kelvinator stuff come out of New Zealand at one point. Yeah, I'm sure it was Kelvinator. But it's obviously, they've had a bit of a shift as well. I mean, I guess they've probably suffered from the same as what Australia has as well, where Asian markets were probably an easier, cheaper option for them. But it'd be good to see that. And who knows, there might be a collective ANZAC manufacturing message going around the world. Now, back to just back to Amanda and Yellow Panda. How have they helped you just in terms of your voice in the marketplace? So something I was talking about with Amanda is, obviously we've got this Australian tall poppy syndrome. We definitely don't like shouting our strengths, compared to, say, the American market. How have they helped you specifically to be able to overcome some of those hurdles?
I think generally in the manufacturing space, it's known to be not very sexy, I guess you could say, And I think what the PR level has helped me realise and helped us achieve is putting us on a level where we are talking to levels of government and, architects and builders, and really getting the core of who we are promoted and visualised to say, look, we're not just a piece of aluminium and glass. Like, we're people, there's passion, there's things behind what we do. We have goals, we have missions, like I'm on a sustainability mission. We use low embodied carbon aluminium. We're always looking to improve the environment with like our electronic smart air system by monitoring buildings airflow. So I think the PR level has been able to help me voice that and really get that in front of the right people, so that people do take notice of us.
Yeah, and I think that's an incredibly important part of. And when I mention ANZAC manufacturing, I would love to see Australia and New Zealand have like a collective voice, because we tend to, we're fairly similar economies and people at the high level anyway. To be able to tap into obviously Asia, but potentially further markets, to be able to tap into the European market. And, the US is probably another culturally similar-ish sort of market that we can tap into. My big thing is what you tapped into as well, is that whole thing of, we're known for quality, we're known for innovation. I love what you said about there's business owners with passion behind what they do and purpose, and being able to voice that across the globe and have Australia known for that from a manufacturing perspective as well, I think would be great. And you've obviously seen a little bit of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
awesome. Because I mean, like, if we want to play devil's advocate here, I mean, we look at the US market, which is the complete. I always say this, like, whether you like Donald Trump or not, he was the one that gave American manufacturing confidence to be able to stand up towards other traditional markets and have people look at their own country and just say, hey, do you know what? We have had a history of producing some pretty awesome stuff. Let's find a way to do it again.
Yeah, and he's right. Like, bring it back home. Whatever his slogan was, it's true for most countries, I believe. We should all build up our own capabilities.
Yeah, like I would love to see, when I was younger, and you were seeing this as well, is the old Australian made logo with the kangaroo. I remember there was probably only two main pushes, probably the 80s and probably the 90s, where that was really, really pushed. And when you went to the supermarket, you looked at your jar of Vegemite and went, is it Australian made? Is it not? Dick Smith had his push. I feel like that voice is lost at the moment. It's a soft whisper, but it's definitely not a shout.
Yeah, no. And even from my perspective too, government projects, they have in their guidelines that preference of Australian made, but it's not legislated, it's not enforced, it's not, like from my perspective, there should be someone in government that legislates it. If there's an Australian made option for an Australian project in my space, that should be preference over an offshore products.
Yeah, would you say the shift in government from that sustainability layer, would you say there's more opportunity for you now to tap into that, choosing local because of the sustainability layer as well?
It should be, because shipping is one of the worst emissions in all the world, basically, of logistics, and it definitely should be a massive push. If they're looking at sustainability targets, then bringing manufacturing onshore has to be part of that. Otherwise, the shipping is just going to continue and the emissions will rise and their sustainability is not really true.
Yeah, just a fake target.
Yeah.
And something else that one of our guests pointed out was risk of piracy as well. There's a lot more of that happening around the world. You've got some high value product you're shipping around the world, then you probably increase risk of that disappearing. Some other countries want to steal it.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, so you've got so you're doing most of your manufacturing in Sydney. I know obviously Melbourne has a strong manufacturing base. Is that basically because you kicked off in Sydney and that's how it's sort of grown, or what's the thinking behind that?
We based ourselves in Sydney because I live in Sydney and I have a young family, so I've always wanted to stay close to my family. So geographically, I'd never looked anywhere else, to be honest. It was always going to be Sydney. Although I did sort of teeter up in the south of Brisbane for a while, just because of when you're looking at rent or property prices and things like that, Brisbane seemed to be quite an affordable sort of market for us. But yeah, we've now settled in Sydney and we've grown our facility to 2,500 square meters here. Got about 40 people in the facility, so it'd be a hard move if we had to move.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've probably got all your supplies and everything, where you are and all that as well. So that obviously helps if they're finding a new labour force and fair bit of work. Yeah. Just with that whole shipping and logistics, how are you finding the local logistics? Because there was obviously shortages in terms of transport logistics and obviously issues with physical logistics in terms of rain and roads being cut off and that. What have you done to help overcome that?
So we bought a new truck about 2 years ago. So we've started doing our local logistics in-house instead of relying on external providers. We used a fair few external providers and had, let's say, different types of luck with them, to put it nicely. So anything sensitive or local that we need to do, we do ourselves now. We've got 3 or 4 vehicles down there that we can use. And we've just sort of looked around for different companies to provide different support for us for local and interstate transport.
Yeah. Okay. And you do your own warehousing and stuff. I mean, that would be all local as well. Now that's interesting, because there's probably not a lot of manufacturing companies that take that. I mean, I would say risk, but obviously you've planned it out. But there's not that many that we see that are doing that.
Yeah, I think you've got to back yourself as a business owner, and I guess the type of projects that we go after are, they can be quite high end, and builders and things demand their lead times are met, and there's no other better way than to sort of control it yourself. So if we can control it, I will. Yeah,
and it's great branding too.
Yeah, that's right.
Your trucks rolling up on the on site. Yeah, awesome. Now I'm just going to throw a question in here, and it's something I used to always have discussions with my dad about at the dinner table. So just to set the scene, was probably the earlier 90s. I'm showing my age now, but I was studying economics in high school, and the whole thing about what I was learning was that if you're not efficient at doing something, then don't do it, which I think is why, America and Australia and a lot of those sort of countries, manufacturing's dwindled almost to nothing. What would you say, like looking back, I mean, that was 25 something years ago. What would you say to that question now? Because mine was always like, oh, if you're not efficient, I've learned economics, I know how to do things. And my dad was like, bugger off, just keep manufacturing going. What would you say to that question now?
That's a tough question, actually. I think, yeah, I do agree. If you're not efficient at it, you should outsource it. And I am a big believer in, especially for me, if it's a task I don't like doing, I'll usually delegate it off. But I think if you look at the manufacturing process, I think the end we can be as good as we want, or we can do things that we really like. But whatever the end client needs, I think you have to adapt towards that. So even if you have to lose a bit of efficiencies along the way for manufacturing to be customized or whatever it may be for the end result, I think we always need to keep that in mind as manufacturers, is what does the end client really want, and then sort of tailor our business back towards that. So even if there are some inefficiencies, I would first of all try and outsource them. But if you can't for the end result, then you have to just manage it.
Yeah, no, that's good answer. Because when I had my dad on here, was about a month ago on the podcast, and he was saying, back in the day we used to produce TVs and all sorts of stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's probably a bit of a stretch for us to ever go back there. But there's obviously a lot of other manufacturing that I think we can become very efficient in, and like you said, to tailor for that high quality piece as well. So we're coming to the time where we wrap up in a few minutes. Do you have anything you want to say to our listeners and viewers that I think partly something that you're doing that they may not be aware of, and secondly, just any advice you would give to them as well?
I think my big push is always just going local first, whether it be in the construction space or your local cafe or whatever it may be. If we all, look after each other, as in the circular economy, our economy will be better, even from a micro level, with your little suburb to the city to the country. So go local first where you can in every sort of facet, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, broadly, I'm always fascinated. I'm lucky enough to, sometimes go for walks around, the back of some pretty amazing places, like the back of Mossman and Cremorne and other sort of places where there's like huge amounts of money tied up in, water property and all that. So I'm like, there's money in there in the economy. Because people's first thing is always like, oh, if we go local first, we're going to pay more for it. But you're right. Like, one, the quality is going to outlive if you buy something cheap. I think that's a given. And two, most of us, like you said, in a local cafe, if you are going to buy local made first, it might be an extra, I don't know, $5 a week. But I think most of us can probably afford that, to help the circular economy going. Absolutely. Now to always ask this of my guest, final question. Do you think Australian manufacturing will ever return to the glory days of the 60s?
I've got two answers for that. My honest answer is no.
Yeah.
I don't think it will, just because of the money, the dollar value that Asia brings over what Australia can bring. But my other answer is yes, I really hope so.
Me too, mate. Me too. Leigh, thank you very, very much for jumping on. For those who may have missed it, how do people get in contact with your business?
So you can jump on the Safetyline website, which is www.safetylinejalousie.com.au. Or if you want to reach out to me direct, you can go on Leigh rust.com.au.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, Leigh. And once again, congratulations on the 3 years in a row, the Entrepreneur of the Year awards. That's fantastic. As we said before, if you, if you are, the movements as well, how do we get to that one?
Yes, that's suppliersdeclare.com.au.
Yeah,
if you can get involved, jump on and sign the petition and help us get the movement rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so let's get as many of our listeners onto that as well. Thank you once again, Leigh. Absolute pleasure to have a chat with you. And for those who are watching and listening, I'll see you in our next episode. But thank you again, Leigh.
Thank you, John. Have a good day.